This is a map of the world's busiest maritime routes. Every year, tens of thousands of cargo ships follow these invisible highways across the oceans. Now look at the red circles. Singapore, Hong Kong, Dubai, Shanghai, Panama. Different cultures, different political systems, but they all share one thing. They sit at strategic choke points of global trade. Geography made them rich. Now zoom out again. Between Europe and Asia, there is one narrow gateway almost every ship must pass. The Bab el Mandeb Strait. And right here, at its edge, lies Yemen, a country with a natural deep water port, a coastline on two major seas, in a position more central than Dubai, more direct than most Red Sea ports. By geography alone, Yemen should have become a global transit hub, a Middle Eastern Singapore, a Red Sea Hong Kong. But instead, it became one of the poorest and most unstable countries in the region. So the question is not whether Yemen had the advantage. The question is, why was geography not enough? To understand the paradox of Yemen, we first need to understand its location. This narrow passage is the Bab el Mandeb Strait. It connects the Indian Ocean to the Red Sea, and beyond it lies the Suez Canal, the shortest maritime link between Asia and Europe. Every year, a significant share of global trade flows through this corridor. Energy, containers, manufactured goods. For shipping companies, this route is not optional. The alternatives are weeks longer and dramatically more expensive. That is what makes Bab el Mandeb one of the world's most critical choke points, on the same level as Hormuz or Malacca. Now look at Yemen's position. Yemen sits directly on this gateway, not inland, not nearby, but right at the entrance. It is one of the very few countries in the world with coastlines on two major international shipping zones, the Red Sea to the west, the Gulf of Aden and Indian Ocean to the south. From a logistical perspective, this alone is an extraordinary advantage. But Yemen's real geographic gift lies here, Aden. This port sits almost exactly at the mouth of the Bab el Mandeb Strait. For ships traveling between Asia and Europe, Aden is not a detour, it is directly on the route. Calling it Aden requires virtually no deviation from the main shipping lane. In maritime logistics, this is what operators call a zero-deviation port, and that matters more than almost anything else. Compare this with other regional ports. Dubai's Jebel Ali lies deep inside the Persian Gulf. Reaching it requires ships to pass through the Strait of Hormuz and add significant sailing time. Even Salalah, closer to open waters, still sits off the main Asia-Europe corridor. Aden, by contrast, is positioned like a toll booth on a highway. Every ship passes by, and geography did not stop there. Aden is also a natural deep-water harbor. The port lies inside the crater of an extinct volcano. This creates a harbor that is naturally deep, well-sheltered, and protected from heavy ocean swells. Unlike many modern ports, Aden does not require constant dredging to accommodate large vessels. From an engineering standpoint, it was built by nature for global shipping. History confirms this. After the opening of the Suez Canal in the 19th century, Aden became one of the most important ports in the world. Under British rule, it served as a major coaling and refueling station for ships traveling between Europe and Asia. For decades, Aden was a central node of global maritime trade. Not because of technology, not because of capital, but because geography made it unavoidable. By every physical metric that matters in shipping, location, depth, access, and shelter, Aden had everything required to become a world-class transit hub. Which makes what happened next all the more difficult to explain. At this point, the question becomes unavoidable. If Yemen had the location, the port, and the historical proof, why did it fail to follow the path of Singapore or Hong Kong? The answer is simple, but uncomfortable. Geography creates opportunity. It does not create outcomes. Ports do not become global hubs because ships pass nearby. They become hubs because ships trust them. Trust requires predictability, predictable laws, predictable security, predictable governance. Singapore did not succeed because it sat on the Strait of Malacca. It succeeded because every ship, every insurer, and every investor knew exactly what would happen when they docked there. The same is true for Hong Kong. And this is where Yemen's advantage collapsed. A transit hub is not just a port, it is an ecosystem. Customs that work without bribery, courts that enforce contracts, security forces that answer to the state, not local power brokers. For global shipping companies, uncertainty is more dangerous than distance. A longer route is costly. An unpredictable port is unacceptable. By the late 20th century, Yemen could no longer offer certainty. Not to ship owners, not to insurers, not to multinational logistics firms. And once confidence disappears, it is extremely difficult to restore. This is the critical difference between Yemen and successful transit states. Singapore and Hong Kong used geography as a foundation, then built institutions on top of it. Yemen had the foundation, but never built the structure. And that vacuum did not remain empty for long. Yemen's weakness did not develop in isolation. It existed within a highly competitive regional environment. In global shipping, transit hubs do not simply emerge, they compete. And in the Middle East, this competition is unforgiving. Look at the map again. Just over 1,000 kilometers from Aden sits Dubai. Dubai's rise was not accidental. Over decades, the UAE invested heavily in logistics, ports, and maritime services. Jebel Ali became the region's dominant transshipment hub. But geographically, Dubai carries a disadvantage. It lies deep inside the Persian Gulf. Every ship calling at Jebel Ali must detour off the main Asia-Europe route and pass through the Strait of Hormuz. This makes Dubai competitive not because of location, but because of stability, efficiency, and scale. Now imagine a different scenario. A politically stable Yemen, a fully modernized Aden Port, a zero-deviation hub sitting directly on the main shipping lane. In logistics, this would not be a small adjustment. It would be an existential threat. Shipping is not sentimental. If a faster, cheaper, safer option appears, traffic shifts. From this perspective, Aden was not just underdeveloped, it was a potential rival. At the same time, Saudi Arabia viewed Yemen through a different lens. Yemen shares a long southern border with the Saudi kingdom. It has a large population, much younger than Saudi Arabia's, and it sits astride access to the Indian Ocean. For Riyadh, a weak Yemen was a security problem, but a strong, unified Yemen could become a strategic challenge. This created a persistent dilemma. Support stability, but not enough independence to shift regional power balances. Beyond the region, global powers had their own priorities. The Bab el Mandeb route had to remain open, predictable, and secure. But predictability does not always mean sovereignty. Historically, major powers have often preferred chokepoints managed by fragile states over chokepoints controlled by strong, independent gatekeepers. Yemen's weakness made it vulnerable, but it also made it manageable. The result was not a single master plan, but overlapping interests that all pointed in the same direction. No actor had a strong incentive to see Yemen transform into a dominant maritime hub, and without external support, Yemen was left to compete alone in a game dominated by stronger players. External pressures mattered, but they were not the root cause. Yemen did not fail because others held it back. It failed because it could not hold itself together. At its core, Yemen never fully became a modern nation-state. Power in Yemen has long been fragmented. Loyalty flows first to family, then to tribe, then to religion. The state comes last. In many parts of the country, tribal authority outweighed national law. Armed groups operated independently. Roads could be blocked, cargo could be seized. Negotiations replaced enforcement. For global trade, this is fatal. A transit hub cannot function if security depends on local arrangements rather than centralized authority. No shipping line will stake billions of dollars on informal guarantees. The problem deepened after 1990. That year, North and South Yemen were unified. On paper, this created opportunity. In reality, it fused two very different systems into a single fragile state. The North was tribal, conservative, and politically centralized in Sana'a. The South, centered on Aden, had been shaped by British rule and later socialist governance. It was more secular, more outward-facing, and economically port-oriented. After unification, power shifted decisively northward and away from the sea. Southern elites were sidelined. Investment followed politics. Aden, despite its strategic value, was neglected. A prosperous southern port was seen not as an asset, but as a threat to national unity. This tension never disappeared. It exploded in the Civil War of the 1990s and resurfaced repeatedly afterward. Leadership compounded the damage. For decades, Yemen was governed through patronage. Resources were used to balance rival factions, not to build institutions. Port revenues were consumed, not reinvested. Infrastructure stagnated. Corruption became systemic. By the time global shipping entered the era of megaports and integrated logistics chains, Aden was no longer competitive. And then came open conflict. Civil war destroyed what little predictability remained. Insurance premiums soared. Shipping companies left. What geography had offered, politics erased. In the end, Yemen's greatest weakness was not its location. It was the absence of a state capable of using that location. Yemen's story is not a mystery. It is a lesson. Geography creates opportunity. It does not create success. Across the world, many places sit on vital routes and strategic choke points. Very few become global hubs. Because modern trade is built on trust, not location. Ships choose stability. They choose law. They choose predictability. Singapore and Hong Kong did not rely on geography alone. They built institutions around it. Yemen never did. Its port was ideal, but its state was fragile. Its location was powerful, but its governance was weak. So a gateway to global trade became a zone of conflict instead. In the end, Yemen was not poor because it lacked advantage. It failed because it could not convert geography into power. Because in the modern world, geography opens the door, but only institutions decide what comes next. Is it possible for a country like Yemen to rebuild that trust? Or has the window of opportunity closed forever?